What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today, and I am answering one of the questions that I get asked most often as a sports car dealer. Do you still collect, and if so, what are you collecting now? To give you kind of a brief summary to the best of my ability of how I got to the point where I'm at now before I answer that question, I started as a full-time dealer back in fall of 2019. We're approaching 4 years now. At the time, I was a Miguel Cabrera super collector, easy for me to say. And one of the challenges, probably leading up until the start of the pandemic, was balancing being a dealer and being a collector. When could I add to my super collection? When did I need to be more focused on adding inventory? And I hit my stride eventually, where I was able to kind of figure out where that balance needed to be. But in late 2021, I decided that being a super collector just wasn't for me anymore. And that was due to a myriad of reasons. I've done a whole video on that specific subject before. I've talked about it in interviews that I've done for various different YouTube channels or different collaborations. Some of my own content, I've kind of touched on some of the reasons before as well. And I don't feel the need to regurgitate all those points here, but just to summarize it, there was a lot of different reasons. One of which was I felt that I couldn't compete with a lot of the people who were also buying the same cards as I was. They had a lot deeper pockets than I did, and I just could not compete. If something came up to auction, chances are they would outbid me, and also kind of prices had inflated where something that you used to pay $20 for was now worth $100. That's a difficult kind of thing to stomach when you get used to it being a certain way. And ever since I kind of gave up on that, I've been wandering a little aimlessly and just kind of focusing on being a dealer because I get some of the joys of collecting still as a dealer. For example, I kind of classify my purchases for inventory into two separate categories. Number one, if it is something that is just too good of a deal to pass up on, and I think I could make double my money on it, I will take a shot at it. Or it's something that I personally would add to my collection because it allows me to sell it a little bit more genuinely. And of course, if I ever got stuck with a certain piece of inventory, it wouldn't mean the end of the world. It would be something that I'd be like, you know what? I'm glad having this in my collection. I think that card is cool. I do not mind owning it. And you'll hear me say that often whenever I do a card show recap that I pick something up and I'll say, I don't mind holding on to this. And I guess the ironic part of that is that usually those cards sell within a couple of days of me posting those videos because I guess other people feel the same way about them and they're willing to pay the number that I'm asking on them. But I've dabbled in a few things since then, and ultimately, I kind of ran into the same issues with my super collecting, where there were a lot of people who could just outbid me because my budget was not nearly as large as them, and I needed to focus on. I could not compromise or jeopardize adding inventory for the sake of building my own personal collection. Those are two things that have to be kept separate in order to maintain my business. For example, I kicked the tires on possibly going after the 2012 Gold Prism football set, knowing that it would be a lifetime project. And ultimately, I decided that it just wasn't for me. It just didn't make sense to pay certain prices on certain cards, and a lot of times I would be absolutely crushed trying to go after some of these cards. And then I kicked the tires on being a downtown collector. I picked up like two or three of them, but ultimately I decided that again, I didn't have enough funds to really be a serious downtown collector and go after all the ones that I wanted to. It's something that I still would like to do, perhaps later on in life. It will be something that I re-explore, but it didn't make sense at the time to really take it seriously and really start adding those to my collection. And again, it's something that I definitely will reconsider at a later point in time. And ever since then, I've had a few little bucket list cards. Like, for example, I do have my eyes on a green cob. I do have my eyes on a couple of other classic cards that just really appeal to me. And one day I'll own those. I don't know when that will be. I don't really have a time frame for those, but it is something that I am working towards behind the scenes, so to speak. But I recently settled on two projects that I wanted to pursue that also pertain to set building. These are sets that I feel are realistic for me. They are within my budget, and they are something that I genuinely enjoy and I very much have a passion for. And like many things in the hobby, they are inspired projects. They're inspired by a very good friend of mine and a guy who has one of my favorite collections on YouTube. That would be BD Kane 721, my friend Saul. And if you're not familiar with his channel, I highly recommend that you check him out. I'll leave a link down below in the description of this video. But what he does is he builds Topps Chrome sets. I'm not just talking about like the base card sets. I'm talking about refractor sets, specifically numbered refractor sets. For example, in 2015, one of the sets he did was the blue refractor set, where all the blue refractors are numbered to 150. He'd pick up all the players. What has always appealed to me about set building is that you get everybody, meaning that you don't have to put a bunch of money into like one rookie and hope that he pans out, if that's your motivation behind it, or something happens where a guy kind of falls off. For the most part, I mean, you're going to get a good variety of players, and hopefully you're going to get some rookies that you can look back on in a few years where you go, hey, this guy has had a pretty good career, or maybe this guy is destined for the Hall of Fame. But the cool thing about a set, like I said, is you get everybody, and you kind of get to fulfill both sides. If you're someone who likes to go after the vets, but maybe you want to dabble in some of the rookies, you get it all. And I've followed his journey on building his various sets over the years. I'm proud to have contributed to a few of those sets. Some cards he's purchased from me, some cards I have gifted to him, but I've always admired it. And I wanted to do one of these sets. I've thought about it for years now, actually. And I finally pulled the trigger on it. And I decided to do two different sets. One of them is a direct inspiration, and one of them is a bit of an offshoot. So this one is my secondary focus here, and this one is a direct offshoot of what he's doing, and it is the 2023 Topps Chrome Blue Refractor set. My two favorite refractors, besides super fractors, would be the blues and the golds. And golds, I think, would be a little bit too challenging, but blue is definitely something within reach. Blue is my favorite color, always has been. I've got 4 of them here. These have recently come in. You got a DL Hall. If I can get a focus on these. That's what I get for talking for 8 minutes and not showing off a card, right? I got Michael Conforto. There we go. Guess it just didn't like DL Hall. I have Dalton Varsho. Cool little color match there with the Blue Jays. And Nate Carlos Perez. Again, no huge names in this lot of 4 that I am showing off here. These will go into the Z Folio. I don't have too many of these yet. I think maybe only a dozen or so, but it's something I'm going to take my time with. I'm not in a huge rush to go out and get all the big rookies. I know that one of the challenges with that is that as more time goes on, if people don't have a good incentive to sell some of these cards, and they kind of go into boxes, and maybe you have to go to a show to try to find them, and you got to get lucky and dig them out. Or perhaps they go into boxes of people who just don't think it's worth the time to list them, and therefore they're not available for sale. Or perhaps some of these become just sealed away in wax, where nobody has access to them until someone decides to open up that box. But again, I'm not in a huge rush on that. Baseball is my favorite sport, and I definitely wanted to do a baseball set, but that was one that I thought would be a fun little project to put together. And right now, that would be my number 2 focus in terms of my collecting projects. My number 1 focus is actually a football set, which I had to kind of change up a little bit, because could I do a Topps Chrome set for football? Yes, I could. I could go back to 2015, 2014, whatever the case may be, and do one of the parallel sets there. I'm not as huge of a fan of the Topps Chrome football designs as I am the baseball designs. I don't know what it is, but for some reason the football designs don't appeal to me as much, A lot of them are different from the baseball. But some of the Prism designs I really do enjoy, and Prism is, I would say, probably the modern equivalent. I say modern equivalent as if Topps Chrome is ancient. It's only been gone for about 8 years now. But it is the equivalent, or Panini's answer to Topps Chrome is Prism. And I do enjoy the Prism parallels. Are there too many of them? Yeah, there is. There's too many of them. But I thought, what if I put together a Prism parallel set? And I kind of put together a few criteria in determining what I was going to do because there is a multitude of choices. I wanted to put together a Prism set from the Prism exclusive era, meaning there's those 4 years there, 2012 to 2015, where Topps Chrome and Prism overlap. I didn't really want to build a set from those years. I wanted to pick a year that has a really good rookie class because I thought that would make it a little bit more challenging, and it would also, uh, I think it would give me more incentive to pursue it, where I felt like, I wasn't just buying a bunch of random numbered cards. I felt like it would be something that would be kind of would have more holding power long term. Not that I'm doing it for financial reasons, but again, I've said this many times on this channel. Nobody likes to buy something and say, "Man, I hope for a year from now this is totally worthless, and that I lost all my money making this purchase." Nobody likes to be in that position. I wanted to get a parallel that was eye appealing. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the greens. Just being blunt with you, I just green isn't my favorite color. Sorry if green is your favorite color, but it's just not for me. But I wanted to get something that was numbered, so I kind of knew how many were out there, which is why I didn't go after the silvers. But I didn't want it to be too low numbered. I'm not going to go after a gold prism set because it's just too challenging. I wanted it to be somewhere where there were enough of them where it wouldn't be impossible, but it wouldn't also be too easy. And it was a color that appealed to me. And I just told you that blue is my favorite color. And what I ultimately decided on was the 2020 Prism Blue Ice set. This one is 400 cards. The Topps Chrome one I'm doing is, I think, 220. A bit more of a lengthy checklist, but what's cool about Prism is you get the veterans in there as well, meaning there is a Barry Sanders, which appeals to me, and you also get other legends in there. I think that's really cool, and one of the reasons that I do like going after this Prism set. 2020, you've already got two quarterbacks that have been to a Super Bowl. You've got two more that people are very high on, and you have a receiver who is already his career in the first 3 years is on pace with some of the all-time greats. And that to me is kind of a winning formula. In addition to that, you have Tom Brady's first Buccaneers card in a Prism set. You have Mahomes in the set. You still have Drew Brees. I think would be Drew Brees' final season. And again, you have all the Hall of Famers and all that in there as well. And I think the design is really clean. I think it's one of those designs that is up there in terms of some of my favorites for Prism. Last couple of years, they've looked pretty similar to this one, but I don't know, something about this one I just really enjoy over the other ones. And these are numbered out of 99. I'll show you the back here. Out of 99. And I think that's a good middle ground. Like the blues for Topps Chrome are out of 150. These are out of 99. Are they easy? No, but they're just challenging enough where I think it makes it fun. Now, this one is going to be a bit more costly. Number one, there's almost double the amount of cards. Number two, the rookie class, I would argue, is a lot more talented than the 2023 baseball rookie class. No disrespect to those players. I mean, you've got some incredible talents. I mean, Corbin Carroll in some years would be an MVP candidate as a rookie, which is kind of crazy to think. But I mean, this class, like I said, you already have two quarterbacks that have made it to a Super Bowl, two more that people are very high on, and a receiver that is very quickly. I mean, people already think that he's the best in the game, and I would probably agree with that assessment. Of course, the centerpiece of this set will be the Joe Burrow. A PSA 9 right now will run you about $3,000. I have been offered one for that price already, and now is not exactly the time for me to pull the trigger on that. Perhaps it'll be more um, later on down the road, but hey, if it's 4,500 later on down the road and I pass on it for 3 grand, so be it. Um, on some of these, I just kind of have to take my time with it and pace myself. I'm not going to overextend and go beyond kind of what I've budgeted for this. But right now, I'm just kind of picking off some of the low hanging fruit. I mean, none of the ones that I'm going to show you today cost me more than about $5 shipped to me. And I'm able to add kind of cards to the collection every single day. And they look great in the binder. I love the shine on these. They're just beautiful. Here's a Mark Brunell. So I got Chino Atkins, Mark Brunell. And then this one. This one's actually a little bit disappointing. I got this in the mail. You can kind of see here. There's two pretty significant print lines on it. I guess you can't really see it that well on camera, but it's a little distracting in person. It wasn't disclosed in the listing. I wanted it at auction for $3. I'm not too hung up on it. It's CJ Henderson. It is a rookie. He's a pretty solid player, but not one of those that is going to make or break the set. It's really the first time I've run into like a major condition concern with any of these. It is what it is. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm sure there will be more instances like that, but ultimately, if they're not too badly off-centered, I'm going to go after them unless there's just some major surface issues where if the card would be distracting in a binder, then I'm going to avoid them. In terms of buying graded ones of these, I'll probably buy the Burrow graded. I'll probably end up buying the Herbert and the Jefferson and the Hertz graded at some point in time just because it's probably pretty difficult to find one of those raw out there. And I have ways of kind of putting them into the binder even if they are graded. I can talk about that when that time comes. But again, I don't imagine that will come anytime soon. My preference on these is to buy them raw. I just don't want to pay up to have them in a PSA slab and pay for the sake of having a slab. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I just need a raw copy to put into my Z Folio. That's all I'm really looking for with these. I've had a lot of fun with this. Again, just tracking down the different players and trying to get the best deal possible is my strategy right now. Again, I need 400 cards for this set. Kind of picking and choosing certain ones has not really been my style. I'm approaching it the same way that I did my super collection, where I built the collection really through. I picked up certain cards here and there when I wanted to get specifics, but for the most part, it was just picking up what I thought was the best deal at the time based on what was available. And actually, through that, I was able to build a pretty solid collection. And when I moved a lot of those cards, I ended up moving them for more than what I paid for them. Was that the intention? No, it wasn't. But I mean, it was definitely nice to not take a loss on these cards that I had put a significant amount of time into acquiring over the years. But yeah, those are my two sets I'm working on right now. Perhaps a little bit later on down the line, I will show you a little glimpse of the Z folios. Right now, it would be kind of a random card on a random page and then a bunch of empty spots. So I don't feel the need to kind of pull out the Z folios at this time. But perhaps once I make a little bit more of a dent into this set, I will, or both these sets, I should say, kind of show you what they look like in the Z folios. But yeah, I figured I would answer that question about what am I collecting now and kind of telling you what I've been up to as a collector really over the last couple of years, because I haven't really talked about that too much recently. So let me know what you think down below of kind of the direction that I'm going in. Again, I have a couple of cards like the Green Cobb that I would like to add. I just don't know when that will be. And quite frankly, I'm not going to give myself a deadline to complete those acquisitions, nor am I going to give myself a deadline to complete these sets. It's a marathon, it's a journey, and I'm going to enjoy the journey for as long as it may last. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. Take care, stay safe, be kind.